Our nightmare is over. This team that risked becoming the first since the 2017-18 season to lose 5 games in a row didn't. Wisconsin Badgers basketball got a win. I am still here in the Kohl Center. All right, by the time you were watching this, I'm actually not. But right now it's 11:42 p.m. on Tuesday. Let's talk about this win here on the Scotty Six Pack Podcast. Good morning, and thank you for enjoying it with a six pack. The Scotty Six Pack, the only podcast talking all things Wisconsin sports at just 6 days a week. For as long as we got to stay up and drive to Milwaukee, we're still bringing it at you. Thank you for listening on your podcast platform of choice. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button, hit the follow button on Apple or Spotify, and leave a review. 5 stars, kind comments really, really does help the show, helps us bring even better content to you most of the days of the week. And if you're watching on YouTube, which you can do at youtube.com/@Scotty6pack, you can see me here in the Kohl Center still. Hit the like button on that YouTube video. Really, really does a lot. So Wisconsin gets a win over Ohio State. They win 62-54 in a game that Wisconsin controlled most-ish of the way, is kind of how I think about it. And before we get to it, I know what you're all thinking. Kedrick, your lighting is terrible. Duh, I know. It's the Kohl Center lights. I don't know what I can do. Or maybe you're thinking, Kedrick, your hair is different. Yeah, I don't know if I like it either yet. Well, we'll see. All right. I joke. And also, if you're not watching on YouTube, you don't even know what I'm talking about. Maybe you don't even know what I look like. Maybe that's for the better. But Wisconsin controlled this kind of from start-ish to finish. Led, I think they did not trail in this one, if I am remembering correctly. No, Wisconsin never trailed in this game. They led for just over 36 minutes and had a lead at halftime, 13 points, a lead as big as 17 in the second half. But Wisconsin came out roaring in the first 4 minutes of this game. Steven Crowell opens with a 3. He goes back on the ensuing possession and gets going early around the rim. It looked excellent. The first 4 minutes looked absolutely phenomenal. And then you get to the under 16 timeout where Greg Gard typically subs out his 2 bigs. Subs out Steven Crowell for Nolan Winter, subs out Tyler Wall for Carter Gilmore. And that didn't look quite right. For the middle 8-ish, maybe 10, even 12 minutes of the first half, Wisconsin was in a little bit of a rock fight. They turned the ball over eight times in the first half. That wasn't great. Settled down, of course. Only turned the ball over 4 times in the second half. That was quite a bit better. Some of the turnovers were weird in the first half, too. One of them comes from shot clock violation. Another one, A.J. Storr trips himself up on his feet and kind of just falls over. Nolan Winter, he gets his foot stepped on and ends up traveling with the ball. It's all kind of weird. Looks kind of messy, and it's a rock fight. But then eventually, Kohl Center comes alive. You get a steal from Chucky Hepburn, a transition finish by A.J. Storr. Everything's really rolling, coming together. Everything looks great. Ohio State comes roaring back in the second half for a bit there. They were down 12. They brought it as close as 5. And you got that feeling. You got that feeling as a Wisconsin basketball fan that, is this going to happen again? Is this going to be the Nebraska game all over again? Is this going to be the game we watched so many times last season come back to life here? Now, fortunately, it wasn't. Wisconsin's offense was humming along enough to keep the lead alive. At a certain point, Ohio State had hit 7 shots in a row. They had scored, I believe it was, on 10 consecutive possessions. It's not great. And Wisconsin responded by making quite a few shots of its own, keeping up. And eventually, Wisconsin really, really shut Ohio State down. I think there was a point at which Ohio State had missed then 7 consecutive shots. They were 1 of 10 from the field until for a stretch, after Ohio State was on that heater. Ohio State then goes on a cold spell where they only make 1 of 10 shots until the final minute, when Ohio State then makes a handful here there, but the game was pretty much already out of reach. So Wisconsin kind of controlled this from start to finish, but there were times where Wisconsin just couldn't get stops. Now, some of that was just weird shots for Ohio State. And, they kind of happened in the first half, too. Ohio State makes a really tough, double pump fake 3-pointer that ends up going in as the shot clock expires. Connor Essegian was on the receiving end of a couple of these really tough baskets. But I think the thing that stands out to me above and beyond the way that Wisconsin was able to lock down on defense late in this game was how Wisconsin played offensively. Because Wisconsin, had a very well-rounded offensive performance. It looked in the first half that this was going to be a, oh my God, Steven Crowell kind of game. He had 12 first half points, looked absolutely phenomenal in the first half. I am digging here for my first half stats. Steven Crowell, 12 first half points on 5 of 9 shooting from the field. He also made 2 of 4 3-pointers. But as the game went on, it felt like, the defense kind of keyed in on Steven Crowell a little bit. Felt like Crowell settled for more 3-pointers in the second half than he maybe should have. Although I guess he only settled, he only tried to. But when, Ohio State's protecting the paint from Steven Crowell after he had a 12-point first half, you can see that. And Steven Crowell was really effective in the first half, in the whole game, but in the first half in particular. He was backing down Felix Okpara, which we said, he's a big rim protector. He can really, really block shots. And Okpara got blocks in this game. He had 3 blocks in this game. A very impressive performance for Ohio State's center, Felix Okpara. But Steven Crowell finally played really strong in the first half. AJ Storr didn't take a single 3-point shot in the first half. He only had 1 3-point attempt on the game, and it was a wide-open corner 3. Now, he airballed that wide-open corner 3, but that's neither here nor there. But AJ Storr, who had only been shooting 1 of 13 in the last 3 games from 3, really looked like he was on a mission of getting to the rim. It was mightily impressive. Then you get to the second half, and it almost looks like a new ball game where Tyler Wall is getting his. He's able to go in and pull up these post moves with pump fakes and cuts to the basket on the baseline and reverses. Looks really, really great. It was a balanced offensive performance where Wisconsin had 3 performers score in double digits, Chucky Hepburn just behind with 9. And I want to talk about those Chucky Hepburn 9 points because has Chucky Hepburn figured it out? We've been asking this. Chucky Hepburn, the facilitator, is so good. Chucky Hepburn, the scorer, can also be quite effective. Can he find that middle ground? In this game, Chucky Hepburn ends up with 5 shots from the field, makes 3 of them. He gets to the free throw line once. He makes 2 of his 4 3-point attempts, including a couple that just came very, very timely. There was 1 3-pointer late in the game that I think extended the lead back up to 10 or maybe 11, and it was just like, oh, okay, yep, this is over. Chucky Hepburn just making a timely shot, which for as much as, Chucky Hepburn, I kind of think maybe I'm a little too hard on him from time to time. He can make those timely shots, and it's huge for this team. He ends up finishing the game with 9 points, all of them coming in the second half. 9 points on 5 shots. Maybe you wanted to take more than 5 shots from the field. I think that would be the criticism of Chucky Hepburn in this one. You wanted to take, a couple more, 7, 8. But if he's effective and he's dishing in this one, I think was the big thing, right? Like, if you want him to find that happy medium between being a playmaker and being a scorer, it can't just be that, he's got to do 50-50 every game. It can also be that he's finding which one he's more effective in game to game. And he was really effective as a playmaker in this one. He had 7 assists tonight. Whereas you're listening to this last night. He had 3 in the first half, 4 in the second half. And some of them were just, finding guys on really well-timed cuts to the basket, hitting Steven Crowell in some pick and roll. And like there was meat on the bone there that was left by a couple of guys too, not just Chucky Hepburn. I thought Tyler Wall had a real opportunity to hit. I think it was Steven Crowell, or maybe it was Nolan Winter on a cut to the basket too, where Tyler Wall kind of picked up an assist, and then Tyler Wall decides to take it himself to the hoop and kind of gets trapped. But I thought Chucky Hepburn had a really, really solid game. 7 assists, 0 turnovers. Is one of the best point guards in the Big Ten. Nothing you can really, really complain too much about there. Maybe you'd like to see a little bit more scoring effort from him. I think he picked up the scoring effort just a little bit in the second half. He was 0 of 2 from the field in the first half. So, I mean, he had 3 shots in the second half. So maybe Chucky Hepburn, could have done more as a shooter in this one, as more of a scorer himself. But I think, and I guess I have to go back and track the shots. But I thought one of the things that I noticed from Chucky was he didn't dribble into the lane and then settle if he didn't, see his own path to the hoop for kind of a mid-range jump shot. I thought that was pretty good by Chucky Hepburn. Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe Chucky Hepburn has figured it out. Maybe he hasn't. But we'll see more as the season goes on, of course. And we're going to talk about what else we want to see from the season as it goes on, going forward. Because of course, Wisconsin still has to play Iowa this week. We travel to Iowa City this weekend, and we're going to get into that a little bit, including what questions maybe Wisconsin didn't answer in this one. What are the concerns we still have for this basketball team? And we're going to talk about all that after we talk to you about our friends over at TickPick, because TickPick is where I get tickets to any event that I would like to go to, including sporting events. Were great deals coming into this game tonight. I know when I looked this morning, it was $11 to get in the door here at the Kohl Center. Just awesome. You could sit lower bowl for $25. I think even cheaper than that. Really, really awesome. If you want to get to a Wisconsin basketball game, if you want to pay fee-free tickets, get them on TickPick. And use my link in the podcast description, because when you use TickPick, you're never going to pay hidden fees. You're going to get fee-free tickets every single time. Never going to have to, go to checkout, find out that you're paying $200-$300 more in tickets for these big-time events than you thought you were going to. So go to the Google Play Store, go to the Apple App Store, download the TickPick app. That's TickPick. Use my link in the podcast description. Use the link that's on the screen now. Use my link in the YouTube channel description, and you're going to save $10 on your very first order on TickPick. Coming up this week on the show, tomorrow, we have an awesome episode already prepped for you. It is recorded. It is in the hopper. It's good to go with our good friend of the pod, Noah Clark of 1070 The Game, who is going to help us talk about all things Wisconsin women's hockey. They're gearing up, ready to hit the thick of the schedule as they go on a quest for another national championship. And it starts with this weekend, a big series against the Minnesota Golden Gophers. I had a great time recording that with Noah. I had a great time getting lunch with Noah today, actually, as I was here. So looking forward to publishing that in the feed. Then Friday, we're going to preview the Iowa game, Wisconsin basketball, traveling to Iowa City. And then Saturday, we will recap that game that your feed that afternoon, shortly after that game wraps. So I think one of the questions that Wisconsin has coming out of this one is, when is John Blackwell? John Blackwell against Rutgers was a game time decision, seemingly. Same thing against Michigan. He was questionable on Wisconsin's availability report coming into today, but doesn't seem like he ever really had a chance to play in this one. He didn't come out for a pregame shoot around at all. He poked his head out. He was still in sweats. And then when the whole team came out for pregame warmups, he was in sweats, didn't do anything. He dribbled the ball on the sidelines, was kind of just hanging out there. So not exactly sure what's going on. Not a lot to really report on that. I don't know. It seems that he's going to be tentative, and you would hope that Wisconsin was thinking, all right, I think we can get by Ohio State. Game's at home. Let's have him ready for this road test against Iowa. Iowa's not great this year, and of course we'll get more into that on Friday. But if John Blackwell is back for Iowa, that's going to do a lot for this team, because this team one of the questions that maybe didn't answer or maybe left us questioning more is, this Wisconsin basketball team, what's it going to do with this rotation as we get further and further into the season? Is this rotation tightening? Is it tightening too much? Tonight, AJ Storr and Chucky Hepburn played all 20 minutes of the second half. That's a lot. That is a lot. All 5 starters played the final 10-14 of this game. Quite a bit of time for all 5 starters to be on the floor and close out the game. Greg Gard called his full timeout, his full 60-second timeout with a little bit over 5 minutes left in regulation. And it wasn't even really because they were pouring in a ton of points. Ohio State wasn't pouring in a ton of points, but Wisconsin had been faring okay, but both teams hadn't really scored in a while. I believe at that point in time, Ohio State had missed their last 4 shots and had been held scoreless for nearly 4 minutes. Wisconsin hadn't scored in about 2 minutes. Felt like Greg Gard was just trying to settle his team down. But as I looked back at the end of the game, immediately when the game ended, I realized all these starters have been on this entire time. And I thought, Greg Gard probably called that full timeout there right before the under 4 final media timeout to give those 5 players on the floor a little bit of an extra breath before heading into the final stretch there. So I thought that was fascinating to see the way this team's bench has shortened dramatically. For all we've talked about this team, being quite a bit deeper than last year's, which it is. We've also mentioned the fact that when you actually look into the numbers of how many bench minutes this team is playing, this team is not super duper deep whatsoever. Nationally, Wisconsin ranks in bench minutes played 304th. And I think Wisconsin has gone down in that metric, playing, I believe, when we talked earlier this week, they were still in the 200s. And so coming out of this game where the bench got no run in the final quarter of this game, essentially, that bench minutes number detracted quite a bit. And part of that is because Wisconsin doesn't have the folks in the rotation to do it right now. John Blackwell, injured. Kamari McGee, injured. And if some of these other guys aren't necessarily going at the level that you would want them to, you don't have a lot there. It's very hard to keep going. Carter Gilmore kind of got pulled. He got pulled at one point in time for a bad errant turnover on an inbounds pass. Just sloppy play. It seems that Greg Gard, he really trusts these 5 starters. Don't think he really trusts his bench all that much. And maybe this is going to get this team in trouble quite a bit here. And if Blackwell is not able to get back into this rotation soon, that's not going to be great for this team. As a reminder, John Blackwell, as a freshman, is averaging 17 and a half minutes per game. 17 and a half minutes, 7.9 points, and 3.2 rebounds. He's a real contributor to this team. And without him, it's rough. I mean, Isaac Lindsey got just under 2 minutes of action in the first half here. We talked about the Isaac Lindsey minutes against Rutgers on Saturday, and those were not pretty. These Isaac Lindsey minutes were like fine-ish, I guess, against Ohio State. But Wisconsin needs its full complement of players if it's going to do a whole bunch here. And another question I don't think Wisconsin necessarily answered is, what is Nolan Winter? There was a possession, and I actually found it interesting because I made a note of it on my on my trusty legal pad here during the game while I'm up in the press box. I noted Winter, second timeout. Winter had a second turnover, just looked not confident trying to back down his defender. This was a possession over in the corner where Nolan Winter got the ball, and it's like, all right, you're posted up, go back down your man. But when he first got the ball, he just looked like shocked. He looked scared. He looked nervous, didn't know what it was he was going to do. And I thought it was notable. And folks over on Locked On Badgers, as I'm listening, preparing to get this podcast up, finishing some of my other post-game work for Badger Notes, you should also go read our post-game article on Badger Notes and all of our continuing Wisconsin basketball coverage on Badger Notes that you can find linked in this podcast description, of course. But the folks over at Locked On Badgers, I think it was Ryan. Ryan noted the same exact possession that I had already had written down here, that I wrote down during the game, that Nolan Winter just looked scared. He looked nervous. He looked young. And he ends up getting called for a travel on that play because he's just not quite sure of himself, trying to back down these Ohio State big men. I think I maybe expected just a little bit better from Nolan Winter. He's played a lot this season. And, I mean, if he can take just, another half baby step, I think that would be really big for this team, to get more out of the backup big man in this rotation. So I think that's something that's not answered. But overall, I thought this team played really great. I thought that this team defended particularly excellent. Jamison Battle, who has been basically a non-factor in both of the games that Wisconsin has played against him this season, as he's been wearing an Ohio State uniform now instead of a Minnesota uniform. Jamison Battle was locked down by Max Klesmit in this game. Battle only scored one 3-pointer basically as the game was ending. He was 1 of 6 shooting from the field, one of 3 from 3. I thought he was, a non-fact overall. I thought another thing that was really impressive for Wisconsin was the way that they took Rodney Cale Jr. out of the game. He only had 10 points. He had 9 points in the first game. Wisconsin played at Ohio State, and he didn't really do much of anything again here tonight. Evan Mahaffey, I thought Wisconsin did a good job of keying in on him in the second half. Mahaffey was 4 for 4 shooting in the first half, but only played 7 minutes. He got sat for a long time because he had 2 fouls. So he sat the whole way after the live radio, folks. After the 9:08 mark to go in the first half, and he was already 4 for 4 from the field. And Wisconsin locked him down, only let him get 2 shots up in the second half. Only let him make 1. I thought it was a really, really great job. Dale Bonner, who's great, guard for Ohio State off the bench, got up 4 shots, didn't make any of them. So I thought Wisconsin did, except for that run there, and part of that run that Ohio State made was in part, due to some lucky shooting. Did a really good job on defense in this game. This team looked more prepared to defend in this one. I thought that they switched particularly well. I had noticed at one point in time, Connor Essegian and Tyler Wall working off the switches together, which sometimes Connor Essegian can kind of get mixed up there and lose his guy. Wisconsin had lost their guy on a couple of occasions early, right? That's how Evan Mahaffey got some of those really early buckets in the part of the game that I talked about, how Wisconsin really did a great job in the first 4 minutes offensively. But Wisconsin lost their guy defensively quite a bit. I believe it was Ohio State had been shooting still 50% from the field after the first 4 minutes, and Mahaffey had gotten some wide open buckets on cuts to the basket a couple of times. So I think Wisconsin did a good job keying in on defense, settling in on defense as the game went along. This team can defend if they want to, and if they're playing through the paint and defending, this team is really, really, really good. There was a really fascinating tidbit from Greg Gard in this one, and you can read about Greg Gard and this team defending on my article on Badger Notes. So I'll leave that to you to go find that work. Link in the podcast description. But that's gonna do it here from the Kohl Center. I have to go home. I'm tired. So thank you. I know this is probably a little bit shorter than usual, but I am exhausted. I need to get home. I need to go back, get this in your feed. And then, we'll talk to you all tomorrow in an episode that is already recorded, ready to go. So thank you for listening to the Scotty Six Pack Podcast. I've been your host, Kendrick Stumbris. You can find me on the website, formerly known as Twitter, at Kendrick Stumbris, and follow the podcast at Scotty Six Pack for the latest updates in Wisconsin sports. While you were here, please leave a kind review, 5 stars, nice comments on Apple or Spotify. You can also watch us on YouTube, youtube.com/@Scotty Six Pack. And as always, hit that bell so you get notified as soon as we put live episodes in your feed. Go read post-game, pre-game, all the good stuff. The article on Badger Notes for this one is linked in the podcast description. Appreciate it. On Wisconsin.